Well, for more on the bilateral ties between China and Cambodia, we're joined by Ravi Ramamurti. He's director of the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University. Thank you for joining us, Ravi.
A pleasure.
So we just saw a piece right there about a rice farmer who has had to turn to sugar farming just because it's been so difficult for him to make a living. If we take a look at prices in Cambodia, the price of rice has fallen by a third since August because of weak exports. What do you think the Cambodian government hopes to achieve with these talks with China to help the roughly 2 million rice farmers in Cambodia?
Well, I think they're looking to open up the Chinese market for rice from Cambodia. Cambodia right now exports about 100,000 tons a year, which is not a very large part of the Chinese imports. I think China is importing about 4 to 5 million tons in a year. So they can afford to buy a little bit more from Cambodia. And I think they've already sort of agreed to that. And this will be formally signed into a deal tomorrow.
Okay, so is there anything though with the rice in Cambodia that makes it different from rice abroad, that makes it less attractive to the Chinese market?
Well, I think it has to be price competitive, and with the prices having fallen, it's going to be hard for the Cambodians to keep competing in this segment. One of the reasons for the price falling is that Thailand has built up a huge reserve of rice over the last few years. When they offered farmers very high prices, so they produced a lot of rice. It's now being in a stockpile that is being dumped into the markets, international markets, that is bringing down prices and making life harder for the farmers everywhere.
Okay, and Prime Minister Hun Sen of Cambodia has also asked Xi to open the Chinese market to Cambodian-grown bananas. Do you think that's likely to happen as well tomorrow?
I think so, because they've made public statements saying they want this help. The overarching story, as I look at the story, is the Chinese government would like to recognize and thank Cambodian government for all it's done to be in its corner on certain key issues. And with elections coming up in about a year, I think they would like to see the incumbent prime minister be in a strong position when the elections come up. And as part of that package, it's very important to make the agricultural sector stronger. Now, China does import bananas. They import them from the Philippines, they import them from Ecuador, and places like that. Can they make a little room for Cambodian bananas? I think the answer is probably yes, as long as the Cambodians meet certain safety standards.
Okay.
Because the product will have to go through inspection, and if it doesn't pass inspection, they're going to throw it out back to the Cambodians.
All right, so overall 28 bilateral agreements are due to be signed by Xi tomorrow or in the next few days. Other than the agricultural sector, what other kind of deals should we expect?
Well, I think there will be, you already mentioned some of the big projects that I think are likely to be announced. I think there will be some money for tourism. I think there will be some cultural cooperation, for instance, training more Cambodians in the Chinese language so that they can play host to Chinese tourists. I think there will be some bilateral aid, because they've already asked for about $300 million to get over the agricultural issues. Now, in these kinds of meetings, it's often the number of agreements has a news value of its own. And so I don't think all 28 will be big deals, but there will be some big deals and there will be lots of other minor deals.
Well, I want to focus a little bit on the tourism. You said they want to attract 1.3 million Chinese tourists yearly. Is there the will among Chinese travelers? Are they interested in going to Cambodia? And other than learning Mandarin, what else can Cambodia do to attract them?
Well, it's a good point. You see, because the Chinese tourists, about 130 million of them go overseas every year. So we're talking about 1% of them coming to Cambodia. The big destinations are places like Thailand, which gets about 20% of the tourists, or South Korea or Japan. When you look at the list of countries that are very popular with Chinese tourists, these are usually countries that are more prosperous than China, and places where they can
go shopping.
And so Cambodia doesn't necessarily fit that bill. On the other hand, Cambodia has a lot of tourist destinations of great interest. So I think if they can train people to speak the language and make sure that it's good word of mouth when the people who come, when they go back, I think they could hit the 1%.
They can accomplish that. Okay, now Ravi, you mentioned that part of this is sort of a thank you to Cambodia for backing China up on some disputes. Right. But obviously Cambodia stands to gain a lot from investment from China. What does China stand to gain from closer economic ties with Cambodia?
I don't think it's mainly economic payback. I think what they're going to get is mainly political. Having a voice within ASEAN, which is sympathetic and supportive of Chinese positions, is very valuable. But there's also a small trade element. I mean, the Chinese have a trade surplus, a huge trade surplus with Cambodia. So in a sense, it doesn't hurt if you can sell more of Chinese products into the Cambodian market. But economically, it's not a,
It's more political than
yeah,
economic.
it's a $30 billion economy, $20 to $30 billion economy with 15 million people. So.
And what do you think, though, this does for Cambodia's relationship with some of the other countries in the region, these closer ties with China?
Good question. I think that's going to be not sit very well with Vietnam, for sure. I would have said that it also would not sit well with the Philippines, but the Philippines itself is going through some interesting changes. And the Philippines president will be going to China on a big trip in a few days. So it's hard to say how that is going to play out. But some of the other countries in the region will not appreciate.
So somewhat controversial.
It will be somewhat. It'll have a price, and especially Vietnam, which is a bordering country.
Right. We've also seen that investment has fallen from Vietnam into Cambodia.
That's right.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Ravi Ramamurti, Director of the Center for Emerging Markets at Northeastern University.